Jen. Welcome, everyone. We're so excited to have you here today. As we get started, we're going to just cover a few housekeeping items. So, Alexandra, perfect. So, logistics for today. We will be recording today's webinar. And if you could drop, as Jen mentioned, if you have a question, please drop it in the Q&A. We will try to get to as many as possible. We actually allotted more time than our typical webinars for Q&A today. We also received some questions prior to in the registration, so I think we'll be able to get to many of those as well. Chat box, share your thoughts and comments. I don't think I need to share that with this group. I know you use that chat box well. And then please hashtag this out, use the social media, use our social channels, start the conversation using the hashtags ILEA Webinar Wednesday and ILEA Welcomes All. So I just want to start off by saying we are so excited. We just launched our Esprit Awards for 2021, and I just thought this would be a great opportunity to announce it out that the Esprit Awards submissions process is open right now. And there was lots of conversation behind the scene on this. I know we are still in very difficult times with the pandemic continuing to go on, and we had a lot of conversation as we moved through regarding the Esprit Awards. And what we determined was, yes, it was a pandemic. Yes, it has been extremely difficult times, and many of you are still furloughed and laid off. And at the same time, there was so much innovation and creativity and just amazing work that was done under incredible pressure, more pressure than I think any of you in the events industry have ever encountered before. And so we wanted to celebrate that. So this year, something new with our Esprit Awards is we are opening it up to our members, as we always have, but also to non-members. So Alexandra's going to drop the link in the chat. We'd love for you to submit incredible work, and we are going to celebrate all the successes. We've also added in new award categories, so please make sure to go and check out the ILEA Esprit Awards. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Dana, our ILEA International President.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here today and for joining us for many webinar sessions over the course of the past year. The ILEA International Board of Governors and the ILEA headquarters team and all of our international leaders have been working to provide resources to assist our members and events community through these challenging times, along with the great work of our chapter leaders as well. And over the past year, ILEA International has produced over 80 hours of virtual webinar content, hosting thousands of event professionals from around the world for ILEA Keynote and ILEA Forum webinars. Today, we're so delighted to host this session with our partners from the Live Events Coalition, Nancy Schaefer, Board of Directors President, and Dwayne Thomas, Co-Chair for Government Affairs. The partnership between ILEA and the Live Events Coalition was forged to share ongoing resources and provide crucial advocacy support for both the near and long term. The LEC is focused on response and recovery efforts with advocacy on behalf of our members, the industry, and our entire community of events professionals to government leaders, especially members of Congress who are at the forefront of creating and delivering small business relief packages. Thanks so much to Nancy, Dwayne, and the entire LEC team for your partnership and support. And now over to you to share more about the LEC's mission, work to date, and plans for the months and year ahead. Nancy, Dwayne.
Dana, thank you so much. Hello, everybody. I say to everybody all the time, I find this to be a very somewhat strange way to communicate with people because I like to look at people. But I've gotten very used to it over the last 12 months of interacting with our amazing industry of event professionals. So a little bit about me. I am a planner from Washington, D.C. I have had a event strategy and planning company for 25 years. It's called Bravo Events. And in March, when we all looked and said, wow, this is a new reality, I became very involved with both the DC Event Coalition and the National Live Events Coalition. And that has been my focus for the past almost 12 months. I consider this my full-time job. It is all volunteer, which our organization is, but the Live Events Coalition was created with the understanding or the mission to provide advocacy, support, and resources on behalf of the entire live events industry. Now, the entire live events industry, in my mind, is anybody that works within our industry. That could be the truck driver that delivers the rentals, to the owners of companies, to producers, designers, wedding planners, corporate planners, nonprofit planners, anything that has anything to do with a live event can be a member and should be a member of the Live Events Coalition. As a advocacy organization, our primary mission is to make sure that our members of Congress in this current time, as well as in the future, excuse me, are aware of who we are, why we are important. It is probably one of our biggest challenges. We've been invisible for decades and decades and decades. It's what our job is. It's honestly where most of us are the most comfortable. And when all of this happened, we realized that our invisibility was not to our benefit because people don't understand what we do. If you think about it, when people arrive at an event, it's done. When they leave, it's done. They don't see what it takes to plan it for months and months and months, or have the hundreds of people make sure that everything is perfect before a guest walks in the door. And so our invisibility became a bit of a hindrance because we had to build awareness and an education to members of Congress, and truthfully to many people. My family for many, many years had no idea what I did. They just never understood it. But through our work, we have made a lot of progress. People are starting to refer to us as live events, not hospitality, understanding that while we are part of the hospitality industry, we are not restaurants, we are not hotels, we are not convention centers solely, right? We may fall in that category, but as an industry at large, we believe that if you work in an industry of live events, and I qualify a live event as follows: you buy a ticket, you're given a ticket, you're invited, or your boss tells you you have to go, which is usually a trade show or exhibition or a conference. That's a live event, any and all of them. So we knew that there was a need to make sure that our elected officials in this horrific time that we are all experiencing understood that there are 12 million professionals in this industry, and we believe that there is in excess of $1 trillion worth of GDP that goes into our country. Those are really big numbers. And we decided that there should be the voice on behalf of all of us to support our partners like ALEA and other amazing organizations to make sure that we're taken care of, we're not forgotten, we can go back to work safely. I wish that that was an easy process. Full disclosure, it's not. Dwayne, who you will hear from and will be able to explain much of our advocacy work and our legislative work and what we've learned, it moves slow. And it's about relationships. Shocking. Everything in life is about relationships, but we've learned that this is about really, really important relationships where every and all of us come in. So our hope from today is that we will give you better clarity on what this is about. Tomorrow, we're going to do what we're calling an advocacy boot camp. We encourage all of you to join and register for the advocacy boot camp. I will find that link as soon as I can and put it in the chat. We do want people to be members, but if you are not a member yet, I still encourage you to join that, because advocacy is what we need, and advocacy is what each one of us has to do. So without further ado, since the expert and my right hand, left hand, back and front when it comes to legislation is Dwayne. It is an honor and humbling to work next to him. It is a humbling and hard job, probably the hardest job I've ever had. But I'm so honored to be the president of the Live Events Coalition. I'm honored to be a part of this amazing industry that I wouldn't want to be anything else. Dwayne, like all of us, is an event professional. Fast forward a year, Dwayne is now what we would like to consider an expert on legislation, and his next career could be that of a lobbyist. He will tell you absolutely not because he hates it, but he's really, really, really good on it. So until we get to Q&A, if there's anything that people want to ask me, I'm going to turn this over to Dwayne and let him talk a little bit more in depth about the advocacy work that we're doing, why it's so important, and a little bit on how it happens. And I look forward to questions and answers once we've finished that part of it. Dwayne, take it away.
Thank you, Nancy. Nancy and I do a lot of webinars, and she never fails to make me turn red. So thank you, I think. You know, at the beginning of this, I had years ago, I worked for a CEO that sent me off to get some leadership coaching or something like that. And I remember learning this kind of 4-point question that went something like, I know what I know. I know what I don't know. I don't know what I know. And I don't know what I don't know. And this last year has been, I don't know what I don't know, all year long. The most dangerous thing anybody in leadership, anybody pursuing a career, anybody pursuing change can really have to deal with. And that is what we found out. We took stock right away, like Nancy said. We woke up, all of us, almost simultaneously, sometime around mid-March, and realized, oh my goodness, this is not going to go well, because we're all about to shut down small retail, restaurants, the whole thing. And it's only going to last for a couple, 3 months. They're going to get antsy. They're going to start opening back up. And as soon as that happens and you can go to a restaurant or a bar again, our industry will still be shut down and we'll be forgotten about. And we all kind of came to this conclusion at once. And lo and behold, 20 to 25 state coalitions later, we've all sort of coalesced into the Live Events Coalition. Live Events Coalition was happening at the same time and looking for state partners to happen. So to the extent that we've now got a going organization, this is great. To the extent that we've gotten things done, also great. To the extent that there's more to do and more that we don't know, still a challenge. And that's where we find ourselves now. I started a chapter in my home state of Oregon. I run a lighting production company there. Never did I think that starting a coalition would amount to any more than getting a few petitions out, mostly to our state house, maybe try to get rent relief, maybe try to extend the commercial eviction moratorium, little things like that we thought we'd take on. Before you know it, we're talking to our US senators, we're talking to our House of Representatives folks, and then they start asking some really deep questions like, well, how big is this industry? Well, how much is this going to cost? How long do you think this is going to go on? And we discovered for quite a while that this was, the gambit here was to research. What we didn't know is that if you're a restaurant or in any kind of food service, you fall under one professional code, NAICS. It's a thing, it's the top of your tax return that tells you what industry you're in. They all are one thing. We are, as we've now discovered, 35 and counting that we fall under. So there is no accurate data that describes our industry. We all know it because we're an ecosystem. We all know you can go to a charity fundraiser gala, the big annual ball, you're going to raise a couple of $1 million. Most of us at one point or another are involved in something like this. How many companies do you think are at that, in that ecosystem? 15, 18? Some of them are just independent contractors. Many of them are small businesses. Some of them could be a large business like the hotel that is being posted at. So like Nancy said, no one else knows that but us. But we know that that defines an industry. Well, most of our work this year has not fallen under the category of traditional advocacy where we say, you must give us this money now. Now we do that, but as soon as we get an audience with someone who can make that change happen, we spend most of the time just explaining what this industry is because they don't know. At the same time, efforts from small factions of our industry are happening to just prop up their portion of the industry. Save Our Stages was a great example of that. At first, when we heard about Save Our Stages, we applauded it and we thought, no, wait a minute, we're singling out part of one of our vertical markets and saying this is the whole industry, and that's not actually true. And if this goes through, it's going to be trouble. It has gone through, and it is trouble. Now the conversations we have are that much harder because our Congress thinks they fixed it. So we're kind of reliving everything we lived from late March into November, when we really felt we had some traction and we knew we were going to get the Continued Assistance Act to happen, which we did. We're back to square one a little bit. So what has this looked like? Well, it turns out that for reasons I'll never understand, they decided I knew more than anybody and about this, and that's patently untrue. I think that the only thing I've been able to do is be willing to work 10-hour days, at least 6 days a week, and write a lot of letters, and be willing to sit on Zooms with a lot of members of Congress and tell the story over and over and over and over and over and over again. And also, you really have to be okay with hearing no a lot. I think the number one thing I can tell you, and Nancy hinted at it earlier, is that we all live in a very closed loop business cycle. Well, we're used to the cycle of time around creating an event. And it can be these days as short as a couple of months, but usually it's 6 to 12 to 18 months to create an event of any significance. And they're all significant, but the ones that we are living at is probably going to be 6 to 12 months. And it has a timeline. And then you get to day of, and that has a timeline. And then it's done. It loads out, you send out the bills, it's done. So governance is not like that. For us, doors open at 7 p.m. whether we're ready or not. For Congress, they can keep arguing until the filibuster runs out. They can push it to the next cycle. If it's time to go on recess, they go on recess. If it's not done, they'll address it next time. So no such urgency generally exists in governance, in legislative questions. That has been a hard lesson we've all had to get used to. So the impatience that we feel we know is shared by all y'all. We know you guys feel the same thing, because we're in it too. We own businesses too. We're out of work too. We haven't had a paycheck since last February. We're in the same boat. The only difference is we're in on these conversations and we just go, oh, wow, this is going to take a minute. Okay. So I want to get a little bit to, I know you have some burning questions, and some of them we got in the registration up front. And a lot of them were about what's in it for my side of the industry, what is going to happen for staffing, what is going to happen for wedding venues. I want to generalize by saying we're trying to make it so that if you are in a business, I don't care what your specialty is, if you're in a business that hasn't been able to work because of restrictions on gatherings, that's who we're fighting for. That is precisely who we're fighting for. We're not picking winners and losers in our efforts. If Congress does, that's on Congress. At the moment, I already mentioned we have a big win, even though we were a little hesitant to fight for it, but the shuttered venues thing is happening. It is good. It did not get enough money handed to it, so it will run out quickly. We also have coming up in the next package, we're about 99% sure that the restaurants thing is going to happen. Why is that good for our industry? Well, because caterers will be included in that, because they share that NAICS code with restaurants. So event caterers will get a little piece of grant money there. Again, I want to tell you that the Restaurants Act, which was created right here in Oregon by our very own representative, Earl Blumenauer, in spite of me yelling at him saying, you got to widen this up, Earl, you got to widen this up, it's still pushed through. They were looking for $290 billion. They're going to get 25. So we're pumping the brakes a little bit on the victory lap here, but why it's important, even if they're not pushing enough money into it, even if it's taking too long to get running, Congress loves to rinse and repeat. The reason why you got another round of PPP is we knew that they didn't want to make new legislation. They wanted to repeat something they'd already done. So we just hammered on PPP, knowing it was imperfect, knowing that it wouldn't help a bunch of people. And while we were hammering on it, we made sure that they broadened the definition of what you could use it for, the percentage that had to be for payroll, and the amount of time you had to use it. That was us. We screamed from beginning to end. From the time the CARES Act came out, I was about April 10th, we wrote the first letter saying, hey, this thing is garbage. You're killing us. We can't spend this on payroll. We're shuttered. And the argument has continued successfully. So PPP2 happened. We knew it was going to be PP2 for the rest of us, and we knew that SVOG was going to happen. So those two things sit side by side. You can't have them both, can't double dip. And restaurants, we were surprised to see the 3.5 thing come out for them. Somebody asked that in the chat or in the registration questions. So we were surprised. Actually, that was one that wasn't on our radar at all. That I think that got tossed in to quiet down the Restaurants Act people. Beyond that, there was some people who didn't win anything. Hotels in particular, they're still dead in the water. Moving forward, hopefully you guys went for your second round of PPP if that was a thing. Hopefully you were able to see your unemployment extended without any problems. So I'll tell you about what we're working on now. We're working on two things only. We want them to create a grant program for all shuttered businesses, not just in our industry. We could say in our industry, but remember, we can't define our industry because we occupy too many codes. So we're standing on the hill of all shuttered industries, knowing that most of that means us. It can look just like SVOG. It can look like the Restaurants Act. It can look like Restart. Not important. Number two is to continue all unemployment measures, the PUA, PEUC, and FPUA. What that means is PUA is folks can qualify for an unemployment check that don't normally qualify. PEUC is the federal government supporting states, giving you an extension of weeks that you qualify. And FPUC is that bonus check that the feds send you. I'm proud to say that half of this effort is going to happen. All of the UI things are going to be in the next bill. In fact, the deadline of the current expiration of your unemployment benefits is driving Congress to get this done by the 14th of March. So that is a positive. That's actually 2 wins in 1. So I'm proud to say that that's going to go through September. That's a win. And go ahead and take a lap on that, everybody. However, business grants, not so much. We unfortunately came out of the last cycle, out of the 116th Congress, which ended at the end of the year, thinking that we would have a new president taking office, wondering if on the 6th of, or on the 5th of January, if Georgia would go with 2 Democratic senators. And so our president would have both chambers of Congress on his side. And our effort was to be entirely about his first package. Well, what we couldn't have known is that he already had a package ready. And in it was not a lot of hanging fruit for us. Here's what's in the new one. And no, we can't change it. We've tried for 2 months to change it. And we've been pushed forward with our ass. I'll just spoiler alert, we've been pushed forward. But what is in it is that relief for restaurants. So if you have a catering company, there's some love for you. Be sure to apply right away when the application's open, because it will go fast. And there's another $1 billion for SVOG. And if you are a small business with 10 or fewer employees and you've lost 50% or more of your revenue for the year, there will be a $5,000 check coming to you, no questions asked. That's called the Targeted EIDL program. It is not taxable. It does not count against your PPP forgiveness, nothing like that. It's a really, really small lump of coal, we realize, but it's a starting point. Here's what we like about restaurants passing, and here's what we like about SVOG passing. We build on it. We get them to reappropriate to it, which means put more money in it. We get them to see that the money went fast. There's obviously a bigger need. Once the law has been written it is easy to build on it. Just like it was PPP was always going to happen a second time, and it might happen a third time because it's already been done. They're lazy. They want to see whatever work is successful. Let's pop that up, and anything that people didn't like, we'll just edit it. And they do that. I read these bills, and that's exactly what they do. They go, ooh, that won't work. Ooh, people hated that part. They fix a few things and they trot it back out. That's what they hope they do with SVOG. Once they see that it's so much more than just the live music venues, the rest of us are in the same shape. When will this happen? Likely not until May. So we are hanging till then, and we're fighting even harder. Today I have 2 more meetings with members of Congress, 2 senators. Tomorrow I have 2. Friday I'm working on another one. Next week I'm stacked. So we're out there. We're doing this every day, and we tell this story over and over and over and over again. And I can't tell you that we're getting the win. Not yet. There's no way for me to say that. There's so many minds still that we have to change that they didn't fix it by fixing up performance venues. So there's work to be done. We will need you all. The thing that you can do is find out who your representative is to the US House of Representatives in your own district, and just call their general number or just email their general inbox. Tell your story. Tell it. Doesn't have to be through us. Just tell the story. Tell it to your senators. Your governor, save your governor for reopening. That's what your governor is going to be in charge of. They're not going to get you a relief package. But your US senators and your US representatives, get to them. Next, join LEC. Then you get invited into these letter writing campaigns. Then you get invited into these petition campaigns and the surveys that we do. These are all critical because they're going to want to know, how much money are we talking about here? And we have to be able to tell them accurately, consistently. So join LEC and get involved with that. This is something we can win. There's a lot of us. Like Nancy said, we're estimating about 12 million workers in our sphere, about 9 million of which right now don't have a paycheck. Tell your congressman he could help be part of the engine that gets those 9 million people back to work. That matters. I'm open for questions, guys. Jen, what do you got?
Hey, Dwayne. Jen, before you jump in and start to ask us questions, and I sound like I'm reverberating, but that's okay. There are tools that LEC has created to reach out to your members, to give you some guidelines, to give you some talking points. So all of that will get distributed in tomorrow's call. And on the back end, we will get this back to the ILEA team in the event that you're not able to join us tomorrow, so that we can make sure that you have that. If you've never done it before, it is sometimes uncomfortable. So we've created documents that will potentially help. So that was my point before I would forget it.
Great. And then Nancy, I'll just chime in on top of you and then hand it over to Jen. So for those who don't realize, there is an advocacy page on the ILEA Hub website. It includes this webinar information, more will be posted, and that's where you'll be able to follow along. So we'll be working closely with Nancy and Dwayne and the team to keep regular updates there. So more information will come and potentially future webinars as well. Now over to you, Jen, to address some of the questions that came in ahead of time and those that are in the Q&A box.
Yes, thank you. So we did receive a lot of questions ahead of time, and I do just, a lot of them were state directed, and I just want to keep this to a national level. If there are state questions, I think Nancy, you had a way to direct folks to their state. We can follow up on that at the end. You're on mute, Nancy.
There is a question that I can answer, and when you're ready for me to answer that about the states, I'm happy to do so.
Go right ahead.
All right.
Yeah.
So Stephen, you have asked how national aligns with state. The same way as ILEA National works with your chapters. Our states are slightly different in that we allocated state chapters versus the smaller area chapters at the moment, because we want to make sure that it is a concerted effort from a national advocacy campaign. our states are able to operate and do things within their state that really have nothing to do with us. So we will assist them with guidance on state legislation, but we are focused on national. But if they want to do something like start a food bank, they can start a food bank. So there's a great autonomy in our states, and we don't have coalitions in all the states. So if you're in a state that we don't have one, we would love to talk to you if you would like to begin to lead that. And what I will do quickly is I'm going to put in the chat a link to the states that have websites and or Facebook pages, which will then allow you to kind of see where it is that people can go. There are the bylaws, there's all the legalities, there are all of those things that you're asking, but they do have their own kind of autonomy. All right.
Great, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
One of the questions that we saw a few different formats of, what help is available for companies like talent agencies, entertainment companies, and those event companies that seem to have been forgotten? What is the right path for them? Is it PPP? Are there grants available? What kind of help is out there for them?
Currently, PPP is your best go. If you obviously if you qualify for SVOG, and those qualifications are tight, even as a venue, they have a way of shifting out everybody who is not the venues they were trying to help, which is interesting because they must know that the other venues need help too. But another topic for another day. Right now, PPP is your game. Making sure you're on unemployment and that you're getting your PEUC, or rather your FPUC. Unfortunately, there's been a lot of talk lately about what if I'm underemployed, and there's a question to that effect in here, and unfortunately there's not a lot of sense in Congress that's the hill they want to die on. I wish it was, but right now they're focusing on people who are flatlined and can't operate and are out of funds to keep the doors open and keep their bills paid. I wish there was more, but at the moment we're in a little bit of a staying pattern, and we just have the PPP2 and unemployment and shuttered venues, of course.
And so I think you touched a little bit on Dawn's question, being in sales and making money on commissions where she's not laid off. There really isn't a whole lot of relief at this point. Is that? Yeah,
it's arguably terrible. The commission people, and a whole swath of people in hotel sales as well, that are experiencing the same thing. And Congress just isn't taking it up at this point. They're like, you're employed. All right, let me go to the people over here. And that's literally the attitude that we get when we ask.
And look, we don't want people to think that we're not asking these questions. We absolutely are. I think that the thing about what we as an advocacy group are doing that's different than some of the others that are out there advocating is that we're looking at this in a very holistic way. We understand that our workforce is our industry. So yes, we have small businesses, but we also have 1099 W-2. We have commission. We have all of these people that make it up. So it's not as if you are being forgotten or not brought up. It's just making sure that we can get some wins and continue to pick away at it. It's not an answer that those of you that are in that situation want to hear, but you will find that the one thing that Dwayne and I will be is about as honest and transparent as we can, but we can also promise you we are not giving up. Absolutely not. We will fight and fight and fight for every single one of us.
Nancy, can you talk a little bit about how LEC aligns and supports state and local LEC?
Yeah, that's the one I just talked to Stephen about. So national supports, again, just real briefly, national supports our states with all of our national lobbying and advocacy efforts, but we also guide them to understand what the state advocacy work should be. We are setting up the structure for them. Yes, they're all going to be their own 501c6s and have their own bylaws, which will align with ours. There's a code of conduct, which I would say what the bottom line of the code of conduct is, and I'll say it in a nice way. Basically, at the end of the day, even if I list 25 things of code of conduct, the end of the day is don't be a jerk, and be kind and respectful of one another. In the official document, it might be a little bit more specific than that, but that's it, be kind. But what I say to people is we work for our states at national, and we work for our states on a national level, but we absolutely support everything that they do on a local level, but we do not control what they must do on a local level other than what we call the hymnal, which is making sure that you're asking the same thing on a national level, because that's important to keep consistent, that you're following your code of conduct, and that your commitment is to our industry and to getting us back to work, and then continuing any advocacy work that goes on after that. Stephen, I hope that answers the question. If it doesn't, let me know what state you're in, and we can easily direct you to that specific state.
Excellent. And then Dwayne, I know you're answering in the chat this question, but I would love for you to share with the group. I know David had asked about the Restaurant Association, and they were very successful in lobbying the government. It resulted in a 3.5 multiplier rather than 2.5. And the rest of us received PPP number 2. What are your plans to increase pressure for any future help from the government to emphasize the entire events industry, and how can we help?
That's a great question. I want to address one thing really quick. I don't know if we've quite gotten to this point yet, but we are a brand new organization with an essentially unestablished lobby that is now just about 11 months old. It is, again, what we now know what we didn't know. The restaurant lobby is 40, 50 years old and has access to millions of dollars to put into campaign contributions and to spend on $100,000 lobbyist contracts that we don't have. We do have lobbyists. We're at the very end of the food chain when it comes to what we're spending on lobbyists, because we only have so much money. And that money comes from membership and from corporate donations. And this isn't a violin time. It's just a statement of fact. We have what we have, and we are building this plane as we're trying to fly it. If we had had our choice, we would have started this 3 years ago saying, I bet there's going to be something really bad come up, like a pandemic. We should get together and figure this out. And we would have done that, and we would have been ready to hit the ground running. Well, we hit the ground running all right, but we were still trying to pack our suitcase as we went. And that's why restaurants got to 3.5 and we did not. We're literally throwing the darts at every dartboard that'll have one. And unfortunately, there's just bigger darts. Same thing with Save Our Stages. They had the advantage of NEVA and NIDO, which have expensive lobbyists and have an established lobby and big names to put behind them. And they have storefronts. People see these venues, they know where they are. Nobody knows where my lighting production company is or what it even means. They know they go to an event, they walk in, the room looks great. They don't even know why. They figure the room just always looks that way. No, it's us. But no one cares. That's not our job for them to know. So that's why this effort is that much harder for the rest of us in the ecosystem that is live events, is we have to tell our story. We have to convince them, yes, we're just as shuttered as the people with bigger lobbies. You just haven't heard of us, that's all. Well, we're trying to change that. This organization is not going to get torn down when this pandemic has been largely solved, when we're hopefully back to work. This isn't the last time this will be necessary, and nobody wants to have to start building this from scratch again. That would be amoral at a minimum. So it will keep going for precisely this reason, so that the National Restaurant Association, we can get to that level. So that NIVA, we can get to that level. We praise them for what they're doing, because these are also Americans that needed help. They just happen to have a head start on us. And to answer your question about pressure, yeah, pressure's on daily. It's probably not going to look like more PPP because PPP doesn't work for a lot of people. We want to be able to address entities as entities, whether they hit a certain qualifying mark as the kind of business they are, large, small, independent, sole proprietor, 1099 guy. We want to take a business entity that makes its living by people gathering, and they currently have been unable to do that for some months and continuing forward. We want to get relief by way of grants for those people that's based on the degree to which you've been impacted, what percentages you lose, and B, what kind of money would you have made if it was 2019? You build the grant around those two things, and it's a controllable amount of money. It's a fair dip into the pot for everybody. So that's the pressure we're putting on.
We just had a new question come in. As a corporate event manager in the B2B space, what should we advise our businesses for event planning for the future? And how can we best advocate for businesses to set aside funding for live events in the future?
That's yours, Nancy.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, wow. That's the that little ball that I'm supposed to look at. I want to take that ball. Yeah, I want to take that 8 ball that we all had as a kid, and you turned it over and it gave you something to do. There's not a solid answer for the question. What there is I think the need for you to be the advocate and educator and informer of your client. And I say that for 2 reasons. Number 1, because they're looking to you, but number 2, you will build an allegiance with them. So if God forbid, whenever they do plan that next event, it gets canceled again due to some unforeseen, they know that we, in the industry, did our due diligence. There are several things that are coming out. We have a health and safety committee. We've put together many documents about kind of some of the protocols that we would recommend. But it's 2 things. Caution when they enter contracts, so that you make sure that you read those contracts really carefully and are very clear with any of the partners that if there is something that is out of our control, that they understand what those financial ramifications would be. Being realistic. Would I tell somebody right now to plan an event in California for 500 people in May? Probably not, based on where they are. So it's the complicated answer because every state and every county are doing things differently. But we pretty much know what the answer is to tell our client, if we're being honest. The hard part about that is, does that mean that I'm pushing my contract with them out further, which is hard. But I think that if we partner with our clients in a somewhat different way than we might normally do, that their allegiance will stick with us, the respect for our industry will grow, and we will grow. So some of your questions will be rolled out in the next couple of weeks in terms of what are our recommendations, things of that nature. What are some of the certifications that you should have? What are some of the new roles, for instance, that an event's going to have? Because even when COVID goes away, you will probably have to have a COVID compliance officer on site, depending on what your event is. They might have multiples. You may have to continue to have certain kind of scanning equipment and things of that nature. And they have a cost. They're confusing, but they're necessary. And so the pandemic, everybody gets the vaccine, numbers go down, looks more like the flu than this pandemic. We still have to be careful because we're also going to ultimately have to fight liability. So this is one big onion that you just keep peeling back. And so I think that the most important thing is to be honest. If you do not have an answer, tell them, you know what, I don't have an answer. Let me see if I can find out for you. Always, you can use us as a resource. Always call ILEA. You know, we're all trying to keep our ear and get and gather as much as we possibly can. So probably not the answer that this wonderful person wanted, but again, from the top of the hour, we're pretty honest and pretty direct. So
I'm glad you brought up liability too, because I get asked a lot, well, okay, if you get this grant program to happen, you're good to go. And no, there's a lot more to do. Once we actually have revenues to be taxed on, we're going to look at tax relief programs. We're going to look at liability reform. We want to be able to really line out what they can and can't sue an event for. If an event did everything right and followed all the safety guidelines, we don't feel like if an attendee didn't disclose that they had COVID, that we should get sued for it. I don't think anybody does. So we want to get that fixed, but then we want to do it in a way that there's still recourse to somebody who absolutely flaunted the laws and did it wrong and created the super spreader. So it's tricky surfing, and it hasn't been our number one priority because we really want our messaging to stay on point with the relief side of things. After that, we're going to look at how do we get this business interruption thing solved. If that had existed, number one, it would have sunk the entire insurance industry in approximately 10 weeks, is what the Congressional Budget Office figured out. So obviously it could never have existed. But if it had, we wouldn't be having most of these conversations. Most of us would have gotten floated by our insurance policies for the business interruption. Well, there is actually a path to fix this. And it's about a partnership between our government and the insurance industry. And it's actually being discussed in subcommittees now. So that is an effort we'll be jumping on as well, along with a whole lot of other copacetic industries like the NFIB, like the American Rental Association. The list goes on and on. That will be a very large letter with a lot of signatories once that goes out. So those are the kinds of things we're going to do in future in the next rounds. Somebody asked about Hawaii.
I just sent them a response.
Okay, good, perfect. Hawaii, welcome. We want you as part of this, and yes, you could have temporary status. Come on in.
I'm very excited. I have 6 members in Hawaii. 4 of them came on yesterday. Can you tell I check our membership on a daily basis? Welcome.
Nancy, you want to talk about safety guidelines and CDC, or has that been handled?
Yeah, so the question that came through is, do you feel that the health and safety guidelines that LEC is developing will be adapted by the CDC and then used to roll down to states so that there's some consistency and ability to plan looking forward?
Okay, there's 2 answers to that. Answer number 1 is, we hope so, and they should. Answer number 2 is, I don't have an answer because there's so much confusion. So the reason that we came up with these is that ESA, which is the Event Safety Alliance, which has been around for a really, really long time, put out some reopening guidelines in May. But those are very much focused on the concert industry. And we were working with them, and it didn't work, which was fine. So we decided that it was really important to create our reopening guidelines because theirs didn't address things like registration, buffets, lighting. Most of the events that they do are public facing, whereas many of the events that we do are not public events, though they're absolutely included. So the hope is, yes, we will share them with them. There are lots of other states who are also working on reopening. It's part of the challenges that kind of everybody is out running to take care of themselves, which is wonderful, but it then causes some additional confusion. So part of what we're doing with our states is sharing with them what National has put together to see if we can come up with one single document. Jason, you cannot find those guidelines yet because they have not been put up on the website yet, but I will make sure that when they do, that I let everybody at ILEA know. And it's because my health and safety person is out on sick leave at the moment, not COVID. So I have to wait till she gets back so that we can make sure that they are exactly as they should be.
Excellent. A few different questions have come in, kind of asking the same thing. Where can they find information about what grants they qualify for, and can people qualify for more than one? And where's the best path to find that information?
I'll put it in the chat in just a bit. We have a about a 6-pager that's not so much an FAQ, it's just a overview summary of what's in the Continued Assistance Act that passed in December. It is too soon for us to start making any summaries about what's in the next act because it is still in the House. It's still in it's actually still in committee. In fact, small business isn't even until tomorrow. So there's changes that could still happen to it. So we're saying this with all this bravado and confidence, knowing that some of what I just said could still change. So when I talk about last act, we know that it's set. Next act, we mostly know it. But I'll put that in the chat room for what's available now. And double dipping is almost never a thing. You can't get both PPP and SVOG, for instance, you have to pick. In almost every case, I was just answering this question in the chat a bit ago. In almost every case, it's pretty likely SVOG is going to work better for you. PPP has more appropriations, so SVOG will run out quicker. The SBA has specifically said, do not apply for both or we will boot you out of both. For a while, people were saying, I'm just going to do both and see which one comes through. I would advise against that at this point. So that's what we know. And I'll go find that link and put it in right now.
So the link that Dwayne's going to put in is to the federal legislation and what has been passed for relief. On a state level, most states are going to have programs. So the link that I put in the chat, which Miss Technology here thought it would come in as an Excel spreadsheet, which it did not. So I have actually sent it to the Jennies so that they can send it out to you. But for instance, I'm in the District of Columbia. The DC Events Coalition, which I also sit on, we had something called a bridge fund in DC. There were grants in Maryland and Virginia. Those you're going to have to kind of look at anything that says COVID relief within your state to find out where some of those grants are. It's a lot of what the states work on together, where one person says, hey, I found this one, and they share it with the rest of them. So it's really state by state by state. And there are also corporate grants that are out there. So don't limit yourself to the federal government. There are major organizations that continue to offer grants for small businesses. They may not be COVID related, but they are doing those types of things. So there's currently not one location that we can send you to all of the state grants.
Do try to find your if you're in a coalition state, do try to get involved with their Facebook page, because I've noticed a lot of these go directly when they arise. Some member or another finds a program, and believe me, these are all, half of them are hiding under rocks. So it'll usually go up on the Facebook page. I know that I'm fairly active in Oregon's Facebook group, which is an invite page, but you can ask to join. So if you just go to Live Events Industry of Oregon private group and ping us and ask to join, everybody gets in. Nobody knows to ping us if they don't really want to be in. So we pretty much let everybody in. There's a ton of information on that, and it may not apply to you because it might be Oregon only. But there's a ton of little initiatives that are out there that you might be perfect for. But do also be sure you check your own state.
All right. Believe it or not, we are just about at the top of the hour. So I wanted to take this time to thank both of you for joining us today and sharing information. I know this has been incredibly helpful. We've talked about where they can go for more information, and then tomorrow's LEC Advocacy Bootcamp. And I know Dana popped back on, so I will turn it over to you, Dana.
Well, I just wanted to say, I mentioned in the chat, but we can't thank you enough, Nancy, Dwayne, Bonnie, everybody on the LEC team for all of the work that you're doing. Advocacy, as you said, Dwayne, is hours and hours of heart, soul, blood, tears, not to mention dollars. So we know that you are small and mighty right now, but we see great things to come, and we're so excited for our partnership and to really continue to share these resources. So let us know when you're ready to come back on. We'll get another webinar in the works, and in the meantime, we will keep sharing all of this great information out to our community.
I can't thank you enough, Dana. It's been a pleasure. My My goal and objective is our industry comes together. This pandemic has made us much smaller and much larger. And that is a silver lining that is hard to sometimes feel and embrace, but it truly is. And so the one thing I want to leave you with, there's two things. Remember to support one another. Remember to just pick up the phone and check on somebody. We're all in this together. So if you're feeling blue, if you're feeling frustrated, if you are angry, you are not in this alone. And don't forget that. If I'm the person you need to reach out to because you need to hear that I'm having a bad day or that you are supported, feel free. But I think that we have to stick together as a community and remember that we have to support each other. And then I do ask you, because if I don't, Bonnie, who's head of membership, will kill me. Please consider joining the Live Events Coalition, because if I don't put that pitch in, Bonnie will have my head, and that is not anything that I want. But thank you all. Thank you for being passionate, tenacious, committed people in an industry that I know I don't want to see go. It is my heart, it is my life, and I think it is everybody else's. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Make it a beautiful day wherever you are. And in Texas, if anybody is from Texas, I hope you have heat. So with that, thank you.
Bye, folks.
Everyone, have a great day.
Have a great day.